Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, depending on when you're listening. If you're listening or watching, it could be a whole lot of variables in this equation. But as it is a little bit after 8:40 when we record, I'm going to go with good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the worst 120 minutes or so in all of sports podcasting. That's right. If you can see me or hear my voice, you know it is Mike, and it is time once again for the Too Many Guys Soccer Show. And it's an important day because it's Flag Day, which means it is the 247th birthday of my beloved U.S. Army. I'm wearing my Army PT shirt today in commemoration. I also know that given that this is like 100% polyester, I'm going to be itching and sweating profusely before this podcast gets over. So we've got to be very, very, very deliberate about what we're doing, because not only am I fat and tend to sweat a lot, but the shirt is old, and I'm pretty sure that by the time this is over, it will fall apart. But I digress. I'm joined, as I am each and every week, by my partner in all things podcasting, producer Stead. How goes it, sir?
It is going pretty good, except for the fact that I still don't get Nations League. I am happy that there is football being played that I can watch on television, but I don't really know what this is supposed to do for me. For some reason, if they called all of these games the friendly championship, I might actually be more excited, because all of these games to me are friendlies. There are two teams that want to just get a kick about, learn each other a little bit better, and try to put together a squad for something coming up in the future. And, I'm seeing how that Bermuda and Montserrat was postponed.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a clash of titans.
I don't care. Absolutely. And I don't care. So, I'm going, I still don't get it. But it's a long response to your question of how am I doing?
Yeah, that's a long response to a question, and like considering like you just retired this week.
Yeah, maybe I'm a little like what? It's kind of weird, but yes, I have retired from a long and illustrious. Actually, that's not true. From a long teaching career.
It was illustrious, trust me.
Yes, but I'm still relatively young in this span of that, so I wouldn't be surprised if a few years down the line I decide to dust off the old master's degree and start doing this again. But we'll see. But yes, I have retired.
Well, we have plenty of time to talk about the Nations League. And as we talk about the Nations League, at least in the CONCACAF Nations League, we're about to get to halftime, and Jamaica is leading Mexico. And what I can only assume is Kingston. I know it's in Jamaica. I'm assuming it's Kingston. 1-0. So let's welcome in two of our good friends. Chelsea Mike, how goes it this week?
Oh, it goes. It's without 15 hours of lower league football to watch every week, my life's been somewhat meaningless.
Yeah, but you still have Nations League Group C, which is the equivalent of international lower league football.
I should be focusing on that. Gibraltar only lost by 4 today, so crazy times.
Armenia
did they give as many goals as Italy did?
No.
Armenia took a lead against Scotland before they got tonked.
I mean, Nations League. I'm with Stead on the Nations League. I'm just not into it.
Well, I can see where the first set of conversations is going to go. Professor Matt, good to see you, my friend.
How we doing, Mike?
We're still breathing. always a bonus. How you doing?
I'm well. My team has a number 9. We might have paid a bit too much for him, but well, I'm sure we'll talk that up. But I'm doing well. Hot as hell here in southeastern Pennsylvania, but it's June, so comes with the territory.
Yeah, 5 years ago, Klopp said that anytime somebody paid 89 million pounds for a football player, that was the day that he was going to give up. And then promptly, Liverpool paid 100 for Darwin Nunez. So, yeah, we'll get your thoughts on the signing of the number 9 and what that might mean. But, gentlemen, we exist in an interesting time. We should be, by all rights, getting ready for World Cup, or actually, we should be into the first week of said World Cup. But we're not. And Mexico just leveled with Jamaica. So it's 1-1 at half. I lied. We should be getting ready for a World Cup, but what we are subject to is various things called Nations League games and a couple of World Cup playoffs. There's a potential that Byron Robsch will be on to talk about the heartbreak that was Peru versus Australia.
He's pretty heartbroken. Maybe we'll see if he
We may see,
muster up some gusto. I sent him the link, so hopefully he'll join us.
But we're subject to these Nations League games, which, as we have said on a previous book, exists someplace in between a proper competitive game and a friendly. Like the best I can put it is they're competitive friendlies. I understand why UEFA did it, and then by default, because UEFA did it, because CONMEBOL takes 3 years to qualify for World Cup, so they're not available for friendlies. Once UEFA said that we're going to do this, this fills up all friendly spots for us. CONCACAF had to do something, and basically it just leaves Asia and Oceania out in the cold. The idea is to get more competitive fixtures in these international windows, because we had complained about what's the purpose of playing these friendlies. Why are we playing 6 friendlies in the course of a year? Why do we care about this game? Well, why not try and get some of these nations more competitive games? And I get that. Ostensibly, both UEFA and CONCACAF have similar setups. You have like 4 divisions. In each set, you have 4 groups of 4 teams ranked A, B, and C. And, the goal is to move up. But now we have found that we have these games that are technically competitive games, but are they really? Because who's really how serious are some of these teams taking them? Clearly, teams in lower divisions, as you mentioned, Mike, Gibraltar, taking it pretty seriously. We're going to field our best team. This is a competitive match. It has things that we could win. Armenia, taking it seriously. One might argue in UEFA Group A, Hungary, taking this very seriously. Then you have the likes of England, France, Germany, Poland. How serious are they taking this? Let's add another layer to this. These 4 fixtures that most of these teams are playing are really the only 4 competitive fixtures that they're going to play like this before they get to the World Cup in November. So for a lot of teams, this is the longest that they're going to be together. This is the most that they're going to travel. This is the most games that they're going to play prior to getting to the first game of the World Cup. And we're left with this. How serious are teams taking a group of 4 fixtures that's played at the butt end of a very long season? And more importantly, how much should we take from what we have seen in these games? So, Stead, you had the biggest gripe with the Nations League. I'm going to let you go first.
I think we should take nothing. There's nothing to take from them. I mean, if you watched 15 minutes of the Italy-Germany game, that should tell you everything you need to know about that game. Italy was not there. Donnarumma looked like he just woke up before the game started. He made a lot of mental errors that, yes, I know he hasn't had the best end of his season, but the guy is still a world-class goalkeeper. But even then, when you watch this game, though, you're just going, I don't see the competitive fire from both squads that would come in a tournament that's really meaningful. And I don't blame Italy at all. You didn't qualify for this World Cup. What's the point? What do you do right now? Play your young players and just say, go and get some practice. So in that respect, I'll say, yeah, okay, that could be worthwhile. But I don't want to act like these games actually have a whole lot of meaning. I just don't. And I think it's great for the Gibraltars and the British Virgin Islands of the world and the Bermudas and the countries that have a population that's fewer than 1 million people to get a chance to play. I'll exclude Iceland from that because they've proven to have a footballing talent. They're good at football and strongman competitions, you know. But I don't see anything beyond that. That's why I'm not going to look at a game that occurred between England and Hungary today as really meaning that much. Hungary has not been the team that they have been in their past. Their golden age was in the 60s. That's 50 years ago, almost 60 years ago. I mean, it's really not that important. It's just not. If I saw something, or if we actually had a World Cup that was being played in the summertime, like you suggested, and they were playing pre-game friendlies, yeah, these would mean a lot. But that's not what we're seeing here. The players that we see on the field, they're going to play league games between now and the start of the actual meaningful international tournament that's going to happen this year. They're going to be playing league games. So the squads that we see out there, they may not be the squads that we see for the upcoming tournament. And sadly, when you include something like this to try to give something meaning, and it's during the time that's supposed to be the World Cup, that's a little odd. It's just a little odd, and it's hard to get excited for it. In fact, I think the people who organize the World Cup should be happy if there's very little excitement for this tournament. They should be happy about that. That means that they're still focused on the biggest international tournament in the world. That's what they should be focused on. So if you think that this Nations League thing is something worthwhile, either you're a country that's never going to qualify for the World Cup, or you're a country that is qualified and you're trying to actually see what type of young talent you have that can play in international games. That's beyond that. I mean, look what happened with Canada and the US and the CONCACAF World Cup. Beating on the doors, angry, hearing stuff. It's like, why? There's no point. There's no point for this. There's no point for this. I got an idea. Let's give the players a break. Let's let them actually sleep for a while. I don't know. Go ahead, Chelsea Mike.
That's a really good question. But Mike, let me ask you a question, because the only thing that I've gotten out of this entire exercise that might be meaningful is the Netherlands might be better than Belgium, because they played their starting 11 pretty much. But are Netherlands better than Belgium? And if not, then what are we doing here? Listen, in fairness, back when we just had the straight friendlies, the straight up friendlies, we used to complain about the November window where, like, why is Robert Lewandowski trucking back to Poland to, play against Liechtenstein? There's always something to complain about with games that are not for major international trophies or clubs league standings, clubs competitions. But otherwise it's an exhibition. It's selling tickets. It is giving the teams in the C and D divisions of the Nations League to throw their big teams out there and try to get better against teams that are not going to destroy them. But I'll go back to my initial question. Did the Nations League prove to you that the Netherlands is better than Belgium? And otherwise, what are we doing?
Well, okay, let me answer that. I don't think that the Nations League proved to me that the Netherlands are better than Belgium. I do think the Nations League proved to me that if I'm Roberto Martinez, the coach of the Netherlands, or the coach of Belgium, I'm thinking, I might have some things I need to work on. Whereas if I'm Louis van Gaal with the Netherlands, I'm thinking, all right, yeah, I'm in good shape, right? I don't think it told us anything that we didn't know. I think it identified problems for teams that they need to look at. I think it told Gareth Southgate that if he wants to get to another semifinal or final of a tournament, that he has selection issues, that his decision to switch from a 3-4-3 formation to a 4-2-3-1 formation maybe has not worked as well as he thought it would. And he's got, 3-4 months to figure out something different.
Well, that is a benefit of it. The teams do get to experiment, with, calling up a guy who they wouldn't have if it was a,
But if you're asking me what did I learn, like, I did learn some stuff. The one thing that has been a benefit to this is these are not straight up friendlies. Guys are actually throwing in tackles and trying to win. We see teams that are actually going out and trying to compete. Armenia tried to compete, caught Scotland by surprise. Scotland had to come back. Granted, they won. Mike, Ukraine, after the heartbreak in Wales, got off to a pretty decent start. Hungary got off to a pretty decent start. Netherlands got off to a pretty decent start. These are games where you can actually start to blood players. You can see certain things. You can see how players are going to react. So there is some benefit to being played. When Stead said, I believe that there's a benefit to lower division sides like Gibraltar, like Montserrat, like Armenia, like some of these smaller teams that don't get the benefit of playing a lot of competitive matches because their whole entire run is qualification for a tournament. If it's CONCACAF and you're looking at the island nations, like Jamaica, like Trinidad, it could be the only meaningful matches that they're going to get are in qualification for the World Cup or in qualification for the Gold Cup. Now, outside of them, they can go a span of 2 years without playing a proper competitive match, which also means because of the size of that country, they could go 2 years without playing a match, period. Now you have scheduled matches. If I were running stuff, I would do the groups B, C, and D, and then say, like, you know what the advantage to moving up through the groups is? When you get to the top, you don't have to play this anymore. When you get to the elite A level, you don't have to play this. You can schedule your own friendlies because you're probably in the top 16 in your confederation, which means you have a legit shot at qualifying for an upcoming tournament, be it a World Cup or a Gold Cup, where you're going to get the competitive matches that you need, and you just don't have to play this. So, vaya con Dios, go have fun. I think it has a purpose, giving smaller countries a series of competitive games and an alternative method to qualify for the World Cup or a confederation tournament. I just don't see, and I agree with you, I don't see the benefit for the Spains, the Portugals, the Englands, the Netherlands of the world. I think whenever we see them play these games, all we learn is, and I said this about the US when we played Grenada, there's nothing I'm going to learn about this game other than bad things. If we win this game 5-0 as we did, that was what we were supposed to do. If they scored, we have a problem. If we lose, it's a catastrophe. Look at England in this Nations League window. 4 games played, none won, no goals scored from open competition. 1 goal scored in total, which was a Harry Kane penalty. 2 draws, 2 losses, and a combined 5-0 aggregate score to Hungary. In the space of a little bit better than a fortnight, Gareth Southgate has gone from just about to be knighted to just about to be fired.
Yeah, I mean, that's true.
And to me, he's still the same coach that he was back when they went to the finals of Euro 2020, which was actually Euro 2021. But, what did we learn from this tournament? What I learned is, maybe the formation change doesn't work. Maybe he has a reliance on certain players at the expense of others that has cost him, right? We have seen him choose, despite form being against him, Harry Maguire, where he passed over a Jadon Sancho, who could have been good. No matter what form suggests, Raheem Sterling is going to start for England at this point. Does Gareth Southgate have a selection problem? If you're going to pick Harry Maguire, regardless of form, why not take Jadon Sancho or Marcus Rashford, both of whom have proven to you that in games they can do good things, but you didn't take them because they didn't play enough. Their form, they have a lot to do to make the squad for the World Cup. Yet Harry Maguire, who doggone a liability for Manchester United this season in defense, was one of your starting center backs.
I mean, the counter argument there is maybe because his form was so poor at United towards the end of the season that he was riding the bench. Southgate might be thinking, I'm going to pick this guy and he needs to play his way back in form. Let's put him out there in these games that have little meaning. And
why Harry? Okay, why would you do that with Harry Maguire, not Jadon Sancho and Marcus Rashford?
I mean, Maguire clearly needs it the most. I mean, he needs to find whatever he needs to find whatever he lost and quick.
There is no Professor Matt, help me. There's no justification for me.
I understand what Chelsea Mike's trying to explain.
That's a devil's advocate position.
Well,
too.
but if that's the plan, then why go with 4 in the back? Because you're just gonna fuck Harry up worse. Like that just exposes him. It's weird. I watch Southgate now under England, and I don't know about you guys. I'm starting to get like, he's not sniffing himself in inappropriate body areas, but it's kind of late stage Jurgen Low with Germany, where there's talent, but there's not really an 11, where he seems incapable of crafting an 11.
And gentlemen, I'm going to be real honest. I think this is what my takeaway from these games are. It doesn't tell us who's going to be the most successful team. It doesn't tell me that, for all intents and purposes, Germany is going to win the World Cup, although they performed great against Italy. It does help me point to, here are some issues. You got Southgate, you got some problems. Didier Deschamps, France also winless. You've got to figure out, and I've talked to multiple people about this. I believe Didier Deschamps has one of the toughest jobs in all of international football. How do you make the talent that France has fit on one field at the same time? Like, how do you turn that collection of 11 plus players with all their respective playing styles into one cohesive 11 that functions when you've got Paul Pogba, who only plays really well on the left side of a midfield 3, but N'Golo Kante, who works best as a deep line midfielder in a 2, with Antoine Griezmann, who needs to play off of a single striker, with Kylian Mbappe, who plays best when he's on the right side of an attacking 3, with Karim Benzema, who doesn't play well with Antoine Griezmann because he plays better as a single striker, but Antoine Griezmann doesn't play really well on the left side as a winger. Like, how do you get all of that into one lineup that functions?
Well, I mean, they won the World Cup last time, so he's got to know something.
Yeah, they won the World Cup last time, and Karim Benzema wasn't there, and they had the same problems, and they actually played a midfield 3, and something that resembled. But also remember, last time out in the World Cup, we begged for France to get out of second gear, Mike. And we only saw it in fits and starts.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue the Croatia game was their most complete performance of the World Cup. And even that one wasn't the greatest display, right? Then we saw them again in Euro 2020, 2021, whatever you want to call it. And they really, again, struggled to get out of second gear, and that tournament fell flat. This is a collection of talent that has all the capability based on the talent to be as dominant as the aughts 10s Spain team. And if this collection goes down and they only win a World Cup, now granted, there's a lot of teams that'll be happy with just one World Cup, but I would think about this collection of talent and saying, when you had Kylian Mbappe, Karim Benzema, Antoine Griezmann, to a certain extent, Ousmane Dembele, Anthony Martial, Blaise Matuidi, uh, N'Golo Kante, Paul Pogba, Rafael Varane, all of these guys, and you only have one trophy to show for it? That's going to be a bit of a disappointment. I'm sorry.
I mean, that's a pretty good point. I mean, that, that when you lay it out that way, that level of talent, I can't really think of another team, another national team that has all that.
Ousmane Dembele and Anthony Martial, not only do they not make the starting lineup, they don't even get into the team. They're not even called up. I didn't mention the Hernandez brothers, Benjamin Pavard.
But see, look, that I'll go beyond just saying France. That Metro Paris area is producing the best footballing talent in the world right now. And almost to the detriment that France can have this arrogance about them where they can take a player of Karim Benzema's status and say, no, thank you, and win a World Cup. Like, that's how deep they are. That's how deep they are.
But it's not even the arrogance to say, Sted, and I'm sorry to cut you off. The arrogance to say, no, we're not going to select you. But then, break glass. We need you now. And call him back in. And have him show up.
Yeah, but again, that furthers the point. And also, you got to remember, even now, how many people who are 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, still coming out of that same region, that same area, they're still coming. They're just churning out talent. And it's truly remarkable too, because that area has such a hub of not just French soccer. Don't forget the number of African countries that also have cultivated their talent in this same system. So you have players that are going to get international football as well. But that's from the same region, from a wide variety of areas.
But who's that going to benefit tangentially?
It benefits France the most because, as we all know, those players are only going to play for another country if they can't qualify for France. That's the reason why Paul Pogba has two brothers who both play for the DRC, because they can't play for France, yet Pogba doesn't, because Pogba can play for France. So, but let me finish my point. I agree with what you're saying. It will be, I think it will be somewhat of a black eye. Funny because France has so many black players, but it will be a bit of a black eye if France only wins this one World Cup where they didn't even look that great in the final. They didn't. They just managed to win the game, but they didn't look good. So that will be a detriment. But what I'm getting at is, I don't think that France will see it as a detriment because they continue to churn out this level of talent, and they feel that every tournament that they're able to qualify for the finals, they have a legitimate shot at winning, and they're not wrong. They do. France is going to have a legitimate shot at winning every major tournament that they're in for the next 15 years. I firmly believe that.
I think you're 100% right. And I think that the greatest turnover in France is going to be managers, because you're going to give a manager all this talent, and why can't you win?
I'll win with the next squad. It was because I picked these two guys who are just as good as those two guys, and I made the mistake. Next time I'm going to pick those two guys, and we'll win the next one, and it'll get rehired.
Are you thinking that the pressure is going to be so great if they're not a legend like Didier Deschamps? Is the pressure on them going to be so great that they only get one tournament?
I think it's a legit possibility that you could only get one tournament. I think that there is, like, the only person that I could think right now that might get more than one is Zinedine Zidane. And we started having this conversation. PSG, for those who aren't aware, PSG let Mauricio Pochettino go. Zinedine Zidane is very much in the mix to take over the job at Paris Saint-Germain, or at least if you read the rumors in the newspaper, the job is going to be offered to Zinedine Zidane, which to me begs more questions than answers. Zidane has no particular ties to PSG. Never played there, not a Parisian by birth, ethnicity, didn't play there as growing up. His greater ties are to Juventus and Real Madrid. He has expressed a desire at points in time, multiple points in time, to take over the French national team job. He said this is the job that he wants. Deschamps has said that he will not manage another club. He wants to continue on as a national team manager. Clearly, France will probably not get rid of Deschamps prior to the World Cup. I mean, if this goes for Southgate, this goes for anybody. If you're firing your manager right now in your World Cup qualified team, I've got a lot of questions. I know that ostensibly we're 5 months away from the World Cup, gentlemen, but with only at most 2 games before you start playing, and both of those being friendlies, it's akin to when Lopetegui got fired on the eve of the Euros. Like, I just wouldn't expect any manager to be able to come in, evaluate the talent, select a team, institute a style of play, and be prepared to go for a World Cup, given that the most you're going to have is a 2-week window in September and a week before games start. That's just setting somebody up for a fail. Deschamps will keep that job. But I believe Deschamps has to win the World Cup to keep it, for the reasons we mentioned. France goes into a tournament, they look like they're champs, right? If France doesn't make it to the finals of this World Cup, somehow the narrative, even amongst us, is going to be, where did France fail?
I mean, I think it's going to be like that, though, with a lot of, if England don't win, it's going to be, why did England fail?
I think we have more evidence to suggest why England failed. I'm going to have bigger questions about why France did not progress, given the talent they have. What was it that Deschamps has coached France in 3 major tournaments? Went to the finals of Euro 2016 on home turf, lost to Portugal. Narrative is Deschamps got there, overthought it. They lost, not Portugal won. Wins the World Cup in 2018. This time around, France didn't get out of second gear. Deschamps didn't do good enough. They had a team that just won the World Cup and finaled in Euros 2016. Why did they not succeed? It is on Deschamps fully to win this, with Zidane waiting in the wings. Now, Zidane, I believe, gets 2 full tournaments. But there's no other manager, I believe, that could come into France right now and get 2 full tournaments out of him.
I mean, the level of pressure on Zinedine Zidane is going to be so much less than anyone else. I mean, if they brought someone in, I mean, the French are like the Americans, right? They don't want anyone not French managing their team.
How many times has the US really had an American manager?
I mean, I mean, in soccer, we're a little different, but Americans want everything American, and French people want everything French. And, France has actually had success at the World Cup. So yeah, nobody's going to say, hey, Zinedine Zidane, get out of here. You failed at I mean, now if he fails at a group stage, that's different.
No, but that's it's Matt. Back me up on this. It's Zidane.
It would have to be an absolute face plant in the group stage for him to not survive one more tournament cycle. But I'll say this, and Mike, you said Deschamps had 3 tournaments. This is going to be 4. He was there in World Cup 2014. France doesn't tend to fire their managers unless you're like, who was the lunatic guy who took them to the final in 06, but then there was the mutiny. He was picking players.
Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about. In that,
unless you're Raymond Dominic, they will usually give you at least 2.
And that was the funny thing. I thought that Raymond Dominic had him in 14, and that was when he had that meltdown. But the other thing that came out about that meltdown in 14.
2010.
Okay, well, what came out of that meltdown was the quota system, which was like, okay, so on a team of 23 players, you have to have X number of Algerians, X number of Africans, X number of white French. And after that became public, that's when they started going to this lineup that they've got right now, which is heavily African dominated. And look what it got them.
Yeah, I think it's just proof that racial modeling is not the best practice for overall success.
Yeah. And I am. Oh, I'm going to need to parachute out of this because there's no way to make this sound good. We've seen this quota system in other sports. South Africa has one in cricket, right? And I understand the modeling of it. We want to give different ethnic groups an opportunity to play, right? Because it helps us in the long run. Where in cricket, it would probably skew more towards if we didn't have the racial quotas in cricket or rugby, and they don't in rugby, but if they weren't conscious about diversity in South African sports, it would skew more towards they'd end up all white. You just look at France in football, and it would skew towards you're going to have an all black team. And identity in France is a very, very, very complicated thing. Like, I have sat with Parisians and talked about what does it mean to be French. The ideals of the French love, égalité, fraternité, liberté. They mean something, but they also that corruption that has been corrupted, and it's hard. You and I have talked about, and we can do a whole entire podcast on sports as a way for underserved minorities to gain acceptance. And that was a lot what happened with that French team. And I'm there for it. Stead will say, hey, France and their suburbs are going to take all the best players. I'm going to say a rising tide lifts all ships.
Agreed. I mean, I know the Parisian suburbs are mostly minorities, mostly people from North Africa and the other former colonies. But all right. So if your guys from the downtown, which is the wealthy area, go out and play those guys, you're going to get better, and they're going to play different foes.
But if there's a guy who's 21, 22 years old who realizes I'm not going to make the French national team, but I can claim Cote d'Ivoirian ancestry, why not? If you can claim, let's keep it close to home. You have a guy over there playing, I'm not going to make the. Actually, we do have a case in point, Tim Weah. If Tim Weah could have made the French team, do you think Tim Weah would have played for France or the U.S.?
Or Serginho Dest? I mean,
well, Serginho Dest, but we're talking specifically about France in this case. So
okay.
If Tim Weah had a shot at making it on the wing for the French national team, he would not be playing for the U.S.
Absolutely not.
I mean, George is what, Liberian? Like, what connection does he have either to France or the U.S.? His father played for Liberia. All right. I can claim American citizenship. I'm going to play for the U.S. I have a better shot of playing. And look, one of the best winners, he's starting for the U.S. right now. I was just talking to a buddy of mine, Marlon, who's Jamaican. As I've got my Jamaica jersey hanging up in the background, the Reggae Boys. I stopped watching the game when they were tied 1-1 at halftime, so I have no idea what they're doing right now against Mexico. But so many of the players on the Jamaican team right now are actually not island Jamaican. Mikel Antonio, I don't know if he's been to Jamaica other than to play. I don't know if Ravel Morrison had seen Jamaica before he showed up in Kingston to play a match. But, hey, we're not going to make the England team. We're not going to make wherever else. Here's an opportunity to play. One of our boys, Mike, I love Andre Blake.
Andre Blake.
Andre Blake is as Jamaican as they come. My boy is straight up Jamaican from the accent on down. But when you think about the fact in between college to pros, everything, he's probably lived more in Maryland and Philly recently than he's lived in Jamaica.
Probably. Who knows it? He probably doesn't even have a house there anymore. At least not anything permanent.
I mean, he has property and stuff like that. Like, he has property. He has property that he takes care of and family that he takes. So he owns a lot of property in Jamaica. But he has spent more time in the U.S. recently, in his adult life than he has in Jamaica. And here's another one. We could have claimed him, and I don't know that he would have been any worse than or better. I'd give you odds. Would he be a better goalkeeper than Stephen Turner or Horvath?
I mean, he might be better. He at least plays for his team.
He starts on the regulars.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I promise you, I think if Andre Blake played for an international team other than Jamaica, he'd have been over in England and he would have been one of the top 5 goalkeepers in the world. He'd be recognized as one of the top 5 goalkeepers in the world, which, I believe that he has full credit to right now. But we don't see that because, his team is Jamaica. The best they've done is the finals of the Gold Cup, which they lost to Mexico and the U.S. Because of their ranking in the FIFA rankings, they have a hard time even getting to the octagonal, the final round of qualifying. But mark my words, once things expand, when we go into this World Cup in 2026, right now that the World Cup's going to expand to 48 teams, now that CONCACAF's going to get what, 6?
Is it 6 or 7?
5? Maybe it's 5 in a playoff.
Yeah.
Given it 5 in a playoff, 6 in a play. Watch how many times Jamaica starts to qualify. Watch how many times Jamaica starts to qualify, because US, Canada right now, Mexico, Costa Rica, and then it's a toss-up in between the likes of Panama and Jamaica. If the ball bounces the right way, seeding bounces the right way, right, I'm fully confident that we will see the likes of Jamaica, probably Trinidad and Tobago too, and a lot more World Cups than we have. Because once the path gets a little bit easier, I think we'll start to see more of them. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm there for all of it. Jamaica, Trinidad, any Caribbean team in a World Cup, I'm there for it. That is so much fun. Sign me up. Don't ask any questions. I'm there.
Was it 06 when it was Trinidad and Tobago?
Yeah, it was 06. So
I remember they were leading England at one point, and my boy Peter Crouch used some poor bastard's dreadlocks to like gain height.
Yeah, but that was Kenwyn Jones and
was York on that team?
Dwight York, and I'm gonna let you in on something. Yes, he's on ESPN. Shaka Heaslop's name is not really Shaka. Shaka's real name is Neil. Neil Heaslop played soccer at Howard University back in the 80s. And I may or may not have known some people when I was at Howard who knew Neil Heaslop. But yeah, it was Dwight York, Kenwyn Jones, Shaka Hislop. Yeah, that team. And until Iceland qualified, they were the smallest nation that had ever made a World Cup. And
do you foresee them in the near future? Because they didn't make the octagonal this time. So
it has to do with anything in the West Indies. You've heard Stead and I talk about. If Haiti gets the right funding and the right opportunity, Haiti has a team that can make it. If Jamaica has a team that, but for getting put in a group with the likes of Mexico and Costa Rica, where you're the third team in a group where only 2 qualify, could get out. If Jamaica makes it in the right group in CONCACAF qualifying, Jamaica can make it. And I promise you, if Jamaica makes it, I'm not saying that they're gonna win the whole thing, but I promise you they could give some teams some trouble.
Also,
no doubt, Mikhail Antonio, when he shows up to play, he's a difference maker.
And in terms of their pathway, you'd have to think the sun is shining on Jamaica, because you say Costa Rica, all I hear is Keylor Navas. He's going to leave at some point.
Well, I think, let's talk about Costa Rica beats New Zealand 1-0. They're going to their 3rd straight World Cup. Keylor Navas, Joel Campbell. You're right, Matt. This is in a lot of ways the same team with some of the same players that made it through and were the darlings of the 2014 tournament. The difference is it's 2022. These guys are not young anymore. It's nice to see Joel Campbell. It's nice to see Keylor Navas get another run out in the World Cup, but we've seen even CONCACAF play. This is not the golden generation that it was 4, 5, 8 years ago. Canada, this is their golden generation. You know, it took all the searching in the world. As I point behind me, those of you who listened last week heard me vent about the fact that I could not find a Canadian soccer jersey. I actually found one. Somehow, don't ask me how. Really don't ask me how. Somehow in between last week's show and this week's show, not only was I able to find one, but I was actually able to get it here. So behind me is hanging my, as Byron Rob recommended, I got the black one, the third one, my black Alphonso Davies 19 Canada soccer jersey. It's got the nice numbers, everything. It's legit. As far as I can tell, it's legit. I didn't pay as much as I thought I was for it. Still not cheap, but not as expensive as what Rob had suggested. Got it here. But I point out, they're going through their renaissance. Canada's going through their golden generation right now. We don't know how long that's going to last. It could be, this could be a total rebirth of Canadian soccer, gentlemen, where all of a sudden, yeah, they are one of those three teams. It could be Belgium, where you're going to get, 8, 12 years out of this, and then it's going to be gone.
I mean, they do have a lot of things going for them. And by the way, can I say, I'm impressed at your turnaround time in that, because I know that you said that you told me that you had found one, but I mean, to be able to get it in that amount of time, I gotta meet your guy.
I'm massively shocked. Not only that I found it, but that it got here in time, in this week span, in between where I was laying back. And yes, I did not get it off of Fanatics or CanadianSoccerShop.com or Canadian Docker Soccer. I'm not gonna lie, I got it off of eBay.
I mean, your eBay seller there is great.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I'm very happy. It is legit. After I lambasted Canada, and I'm still gonna lambast them, because why did I have to go through all of that and go through some Route 1 seller on eBay who could or could not be legit to get my jersey sent to me? Full credit to this dude for getting it from Canada to my house in less than a week. Well, I didn't think it was going to show up, but yep, I have my Canada soccer jersey. I'm very happy about it. I'm excited.
Yeah. No, but Mike, I got to say, when you look at that name on that jersey, right? Canada has a bona fide superstar who's young and is going to be there for probably 2 more World Cups. I would think
easy.
And I mean, look at Costa Rica. Look what they're able to do with a single superstar. I mean, they have young players around him. I think they're ascending. And, if the United States can't pull it together and become a superstar footballing nation like we should be, with the population that we have and the amount of wealth that we have to train people, and Mexico doesn't emerge with new, Mexico is always going to have great talent, but there's wide open here for Canada to just own CONCACAF.
Well, to me, Canada right now as it sits is more like Wales, where it's a team built around basically two players. Jonathan Davies, Jonathan Davies and Jonathan Davis and Alphonso Davies, right? Those are the two key players. Wales made a run at the Euros, made multiple World Cups with the team built around Gareth Bale and Aaron Ramsey, and they were fine. You can do that when you have a player the caliber of Alphonso Davies. And let's be real honest. Jonathan Davis is a very, 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 very good player. I know Arsenal's in for him this summer. A couple of Premier League teams, a couple of other European teams in the top 5 are in for him. He's a great player, very versatile attacker. I suspect that he'll be moving on from the Dutch league and going to one of the top 5 leagues in Europe, if not this summer, certainly after the World Cup. Kyle Larin is also a good player. I suspect that this World Cup is a showplace for him. He's going to be on. But Wales built an entire team around complementing Aaron Ramsey and Gareth Bale. And they're fine for it.
And in some ways, it's even more advantageous. If we're going to take the Wales analogy, Wales still has to go through the minefield that is Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Canada just has CONCACAF. They have Mexico.
Well, even with look, let's be honest. We've seen teams make it with less.
Yeah.
Poland has made it in basically what's their whole entire team? Robert Lewandowski.
Well, even before the Lewandowski and the sort of Polish golden generation, like I was in Germany, I saw that team in 06. They had no business being there. It was dudes.
I don't know, man. The 06 match where it was Fabianski who scored, or Klose. It was close. He's from Poland.
Well, okay.
They scored 1-0. That's still the hardest loss.
You had Fabianski and Podolski who were Polish, but then you can also look at the Turkish contingent that's going to scream about Gundogan and other players. I think Zol on that team as well, right? We just talked about the fact
multi-ethnic Germany when they want to be.
I mean. Yeah. Like, what would Algeria do to have Zinedine Zidane? What would Algeria do to have a team that could have had Zinedine Zidane and Karim Benzema on it?
Fakir, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, Raphael Varane is not French. He's from the Caribbean. So were so many, Claude Makelele, so many of those guys were.
Do some of those French, because they're still technically colonies, do they have their own national squads, or is it just
they technically have national squads that can't compete internationally?
Okay.
So Martinique, which is Martinique is Raphael Varane.
Mm-hmm.
The Martinique national team can't compete in a World Cup, but they can compete
in the
Gold Cup.
Yeah.
So
because didn't one of the old heads from France?
Yeah, it's not Makelele, it's the other Chelsea midfielder who came out for them.
Maluda?
Flor Maluda tried to play for one of the islands. And he claimed that he could do it because he hadn't played for France in like 20 years. And they said, okay, well, you're still technically a French player. You can't do it. And all right, we're going to play him. And then, well, if you do, you're going to forfeit. We're still going to play him because Florent Maluda's like the greatest player that's ever played from Martinique. And he still went out and played. And, he was still phenomenal. But again, if Martinique, all of those islands actually had their players,
the French political system is different though,
because I think even Henri is Caribbean.
Guadeloupe.
Yeah, Guadeloupe. I know Veron is Martinique. Maluda was a friend was Martinique or Guadeloupe. A lot of them are. A lot of the Dutch players, Edgar Davids is Curacao. And it's changed a little bit. Like more and more of them are actually, but these like overseas territories are a real source of players. France would never have won either of the World Cups that they have won if it was not for the overseas players. Germany would not have won the last one if it wasn't for the ethnic Poles and Turks that they brought into the team, because as I recall, yes, it was Götze who scored the goal, but Gundogan and Ozil had a big part in getting them through that tournament.
And old man Klose, because it was really when Los actually started him up top in the knockouts when they really got it.
Isn't it? It's Miroslav Klose has the record for German goals, but he broke Lucas Podolski's, both of whom sound very, very Polish to me.
Just a wee bit.
Yeah. So, yeah, no team.
Oh, they were both born. Sorry, I muted. They were both born in Poland. Like it wasn't even like, their families were from Poland and they moved. No, they were born in Poland and they went to, German academies when they were younger.
Let's not, but look, if we're talking about repatriation, it's not like the U.S. is immune to this. John Anthony Brooks shows up at the World Cup in 2018, the son of a service member, and speaks absolutely no English.
Right.
Like, we had Timmy Chandler, ethnic German, Jermaine Jones, ethnic German. I believe both our right and left backs were ethnic Germans.
Well, that was kind of like, wasn't that Klinsmann's plan, was to just kind of like, just kind of raid Germany?
Well, he did for all the, but it's funny. They were all Germans of African-American extract. Like they were all the sons of service members. But John Anthony Brooks showed up to the World Cup. It was the first time he'd ever played for the United States, and he spoke no English. He scores the goal against Ghana. They're interviewing him in English, and the dude speaks no English. And I'm not faulting him for that. It's like, you grew up in Germany. You went to German-speaking schools. You went to a German-speaking academy. You spoke German. You're German. There's nothing wrong with that. My own uncle, his father was a service member. His mother was a German. He moved to the United States, and for the first couple of years, he didn't speak English. He spoke German. It happens.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not even on this broadcast right here. Both Matt and I, we both cheer for Poland because when we were younger, the United States had no shot of winning a World Cup. And it's not like Poland had a great shot, but they at least had, talented players.
If we're going to get into that, you and Matt both cheer for Poland. I know you cheer for the Ukraine. I'm pretty sure Matt cheers for the Ukraine, although I've never seen him do it.
I mean, I lived in Ukraine, so
I have
I get that pass.
I have my slew of jerseys that I will cheer for, because to be a U.S. fan is to have a backup team.
Yeah.
Because whenever you go to a World Cup, if you want to be interested in it when it comes to the latter half, you have to have a backup team. Because you just cheer for the U.S. and you say that I'm only going to cheer for the U.S. At the best, what are you going to get? 4 games, maybe 5, or maybe 4 games.
It's
the 3 group stage games.
3 games. It's 3.
I think the best that we've ever done is 2002, where he got through the group, won a round of 16 and lost in the quarterfinal.
Yep.
Right. So the best we've ever had is 5 games. In a tournament, if I want to be involved until the latter stages, I have a backup team. I'd have a couple of backup teams.
I didn't. Mine are Poland and Argentina.
Mine is, I have however many jerseys I have set out for that World Cup, and I'm gonna wear it, and I'm gonna see who comes and talks to me that day.
And I have witnessed this phenomenon at bars with you.
And it's fun though.
Oh God, yes.
It's fun. I'm gonna take pictures. I'm gonna hang out. I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna see who's gonna talk in any tournament.
We benefited. I was 20. Speaking of 2010, me and Mike, I forget what bar we were at, and it was Italy, Slovakia.
And I had my Italy jersey.
Crazy match, and I had my throwback Czechoslovakia jersey. Mike, I think you had
an Italy jersey.
Yeah. And this little old guy, and I see he's staring at me. And at first I'm like, he's going to kick my ass. What the hell's going on here? Then all of a sudden I start getting free beer. And it turns out it's this little old Slovak guy. And we start talking about like that Czechoslovakian team that beat West Germany in the 70s. And talking to you, he's great. It's great.
Yeah, I would encourage more people to do it. All right. I need to start figuring out where I want to go with this podcast and where I want to go with my life right now. We have meandered through everything in the world. Mike, I do want to bring it back to a little bit of lower league stuff. I know you got to go in a little bit.
I mean,
what's going on with Derby County?
You know what the thing is? The sad thing is that I don't really think anyone knows for certain, and that's the terrible part of this. Just to recap for everybody, if you're not following it, Derby County 2 years ago went all in to try to make it back to the Premiership. That got them in a lot of financial trouble, and that got them essentially relegated, and it bankrupted their owner. They went into administration, and they have not been able to find anyone to buy the team for over 6 months now. I think it's 8 months at this point. But this guy comes along, an American guy. When they first went into administration, his name is Chris Kirchner. He has a tech company, .com something.
Slink.io.
Yeah, which I'd never heard of it. So I don't know really what they do. But apparently they don't do as much business as he'd like you to think. Because so he was in the mix to buy Derby in the fall, and then he kind of pulled out. And then there were some other people interested, but the administrators, which is this group called Quantuma, they failed to pick anybody to buy them. So Chris Kirchner, after he gave up his interest, he went to go buy Preston North End, another championship side. And apparently that deal was inked, but it fell through for reasons that are again unclear, but speculation about the finances. So we get to the end of March, and Derby are at this point like failing to pay bills. I'm pretty sure Wayne Rooney covered like the last 3 months of the season for the staff, because when they say where the funding comes from, it's sources close to the team, which is probably him. Anyway, they picked him to be the new owner in April. And here we are 2 months later. He's missed a considerable number of deadlines to provide funding. And word comes out last week that it doesn't look like he's going to be able to get that funding. So it was a big alert last Friday.
It's not only that he's not going to be able to get funding, it's that a transfer needs to be made. He has said, okay, due to international banking regulations and bank holidays, I tried to make transfer, but it didn't arrive on time. So I tried some alternative method, which Mike, to me, that is literally the 21st century version of the check is in the mail.
Yeah, it didn't really jive, right? Because so he was complaining that he was having problems getting the money through international regulations. But so if you try one time to get money through international regulations and it doesn't go, and then you go try another route, I think anything I know about law enforcement makes that a red flag, right? So not only is the check in the mail, but he's also like obviously done the most irrational thing.
And he's talking about, well, the money laundering people flag this, but I'm also thinking, like, I've seen international banking where they transfer hundreds of millions of dollars, euros, pounds, whatever you want per day through these channels. We're not talking about hundreds of millions. We're talking about 25. And I know as an individual, when I'm about to make a serious purchase, for instance, one that might exceed the limit on my credit card, I call up my credit card company and I said, by the way, I'm buying a computer.
Right.
I'm going to put all that down. It's going to be the charge I expect. It's going to be roughly X thousands of dollars. Did my dude not call his bank and the other people's bank and say, hey, by the way, I'm transferring this amount of money. I'm not sure if you heard this, but you can find it in the news. There are all these articles that are being about me buying this club. I'm sending them the money for this transaction. If you would like to verify, here are, I don't know, 8 independent articles that will tell you I'm about to do this, which proves I'm about to do this. So I'm going to send this money here over there, and I need you to approve that and talk to your people on the other side and make sure they know.
We all have one of these, right? Mm-hmm. Like these are in our pockets. Like, here's the money. It's right here. If you've got a bank account and you can't get it on this, I don't know what, I mean, you're probably not dealing with the right people. And
it sounds a lot to me, and I'm not going to lie. It sounds a lot to me like John Spanos, the dude who tried to buy the Islanders back in the day when he actually had no money to do it. And he tried and tried and tried. And, you know, I'm not saying, like, when it comes to him, there was actually fraud involved where he was manipulating bank letterheads and things like this. I'm not saying that Chris Kirchner did anything like this. I'm just something smelled a little bit rotten. And I'm pissed at the EFL for and the administrators. How did you not know this was a bad thing? When you say he showed us proof of funding, what proof did he show? Because I swear it was like I think they were one step removed from a post-it note that said, I owe you £2.6 million that I'm going to pay for Derby.
Now listen, I'm a little bit more forgiving on this end, right? Because I'm a realtor, right? So I deal with large monetary transactions all the time. And people come with pre-approval letters all the time. And very often for reasons that are unforeseen, throughout the process of getting a loan, people get denied the credit. That happens all the time. However, two things. One, if you're going to buy a soccer team, have a backup source of funding. I mean, you know, with this, we're not buying a $200,000 house here. You know, you're buying probably, I think it's probably going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 million pounds, like almost $40 million. They never announced the figure. But for one thing, have another source of funding. But for a second, like Kirchner, I see people in real estate like this too. Kirchner is he's a rich entitled douchebag, right? And so he couldn't get Derby the first time, so he goes to Preston North End, and then he screws over Preston North End by reneging on a deal, and now he's reneged on this deal. And I mean, if this guy ever pops up again and tries to buy a soccer team, like he should be, I mean, first of all, someone should slap him in the face. But second of all, how can this be allowed? To me, I know you've got complaints about the league. We all do. I mean, their financial fitness. They did terrible work finding a buyer for Bury when they were buried.
Bury Bolton. My problem with this was, even if he had been allowed to buy the team, there's no indication that he would have been able to sustain the team.
Right.
Which then leads me to a Wigan situation where we bought the team and then a year later, with no explanation, again, they're in administration with more debt, with more problems. These are proper institutions. And I know that we are all fans of very large teams, ones that are in a lot of ways too big to fail in that respect. You know, under Gillette, Liverpool did come close, but their proximity to actually going into administration, actually collapsing, was not nearly what we're dealing with the likes of Bury, with the likes of Bolton, with the likes of Wigan, with the likes of Derby. Just because Chelsea, Man United, Everton, Liverpool, Aston Villa have ascended to a tier where they are large clubs, doesn't mean that their local importance is anywhere greater than a Bury or a Bolton or Derby County or a Wickham or something like that. And so I have a massive problem with, I don't feel like the people who are supposed to be safeguarding these institutions are doing the job that they need to do to make sure that the people who come in and take them over have the capacity to sustain them. And I'm not talking about move them up. I'm talking about just to keep them in existence.
You know what? And that really is a shame. And for that, I do blame the administrators. I don't think the league was as big in this as possible. First of all, this guy Kirshner is clearly full of crap, right? Like he's
already $800,000 in debt to the Dallas Stars for failing to pay for a deal he negotiated to have his logo put on their practice jerseys. Right? There's any number of deals he's negotiated recently that he hasn't paid.
Right. But the most telling thing was on Friday, he's one of these guys who's on Twitter all the time, yap this, yap that, I'm better than you, blah, blah, blah. On Friday, when this came out, he was in England at the Saudi Golf Tour. I mean, another indication of douchiness. But he's there and no tweets, no statements, no explanation. There was clearly a backdoor PR push because around the middle of Friday, I kind of cocked my head and said, well, it actually kind of looks like everything's okay. And you know how the English sports media is, they tend to sensationalize everything. Because of course the English media were telling us at Chelsea how Todd Bowley was going to get kicked out, like the deal was going to fall through. Like, so I see that all the time. But there was very clearly smoke there that this deal was going to fall apart. And here's why this is terrible for Derby County. First of all, Derby County is a founder member of the Football League. They're one of the original 12 clubs ever. That's not Chelsea, not Liverpool, not Man U. These guys were there at the beginning. So just that little bit of tradition. But Derby County also, as a football team, only were relegated because they took a 21-point hit. So they were set up to just bounce right back up, get themselves back together and get back to the championship. They have only played, by the way, I think it's 3 seasons at the 3rd tier ever in their entire history. But they were set up to just go right back up. But right now they only have 5 senior players under contract. And this ownership deal falling through is going to slow up. I mean, nobody's going to show up with a 40 million pound check tomorrow. So it's going to take a little while. The players they're going to be behind on.
Well, that's the big issue is right now they are technically allowed to start next league season because they didn't start the season in administration. The rule is you can't start one season in administration is still being, but liquidation is at this point a very real possibility. And one of the reasons why liquidation would be a real possibility is because they farted around with this dude for the better part of 3 months with this deal when there were possibilities of other owners coming through and actually said, we're going to complete this.
Yeah,
That's
and they've gone back to all the guys who were involved. It's Steve Morgan, Andy Appleby. These guys are all making noise like they want to jump in, but it's they're they've lost now the advantage they had to be able to get back up to the championship. And and those guys were in the mix before, and while they were in administration for 4 months, they were not selected. So they've obviously got flaws in their bids as well. So and their
but
flaws
we don't know what the flaws in their bid was.
Right.
Because we don't know what it was about this bid that was most attractive. Right. To say that it was flawed on the level that we might think it was flawed could be different. They could have been willing to pay off things that the Kirchner bid could have been willing to pay off things that most people weren't. What we've heard, for example, Ashley was involved, and there's a lot of creditors that he's not willing to pay off. Right. Not my problem, right? There's a, they don't own the stadium. There could be a lot of bids where they're like, what I'm not going to do is pay Mel Morris $20 million for this stadium, which should be property of, I might be willing to pay 50 cents on the dollar, but what I'm not going to do is give him 20 million pounds.
Right. And that could one day be subject to liability and the EFL. I mean, part of the other team's claims against them was this creative accounting around him buying the stadium for 80 million from the team. And I'm referring to former owner Mel Morris, who owns the stadium.
But he also negotiated this deal with, I believe it was Middlesbrough, where
Middlesbrough is good.
Yeah, where he said he's going to pay them £3 million to settle their lawsuit, but the only way that he's going to pay them £3 million is predicated on the sale of the stadium. So somebody's got to give him the 20 million pounds that he's asking for the stadium, so that he can then pay off this $3 million bid.
Right.
But
and there's an outstanding Wickham claim too that
hasn't been solved.
Right.
And we don't know what that's going to be valued at. And so, if I'm an investor coming in, even if I do totally love soccer, I'm in it for the game. I want to rescue Derby,
one of the most storied clubs in the history of the league.
I want to rescue them. Even I can see where that price tag is going to climb on me very, very, very quickly.
And just according to Transfermarkt, the most valuable team in League One right now, which is where Derby are, is valued at like $15 million. So, yeah, I mean, paying 20 for a stadium of a $15 million team, yeah, there's a lot of problems there. They're in a world of hurt, and honestly, again, liquidation, them being buried, is a possibility.
And well, yeah, and again, that hurts. I talked to one of our friends, solicitor Oliver Banks, who occasionally pops up on the text thread. He's a Man United fan, but he's from Bury, and talked about like his childhood club was Bury, and to see them just vanish, to see what Bolton went through this year and all that was just awful. But all right, gentlemen, we got to wrap this up. It has been really, really fun. We should get together and do this again.
How about next Monday?
No, I'm gonna be on my way back from the beach, so it'll probably be next Tuesday.
Oh,
Anyway,
I forgot it wasn't Monday. We
Yeah.
usually film on Monday.
yeah, we usually, but gentlemen, it has been really, really fun. I say that we do this again, either on a podcast or on a short get together, talk a little bit about whatever. Big shouts out to producer Stead for getting us up and running. He had to run. Such is the life of having two small children. To Chelsea Mike, of course, thank you. And Professor Matt, to both of you, I will be up in the Philadelphia area over the 4th of July weekend. I already reached out to Matt, Mike.
I should know more about that in the coming days.
Yeah, get yours in. Would love to see you. Would love to hang out with you. Gentlemen, it has been fun. So for producer Stead, Chelsea Mike, and Professor Matt, I'm Mike. We did all right this week. We'll try and do better next week. This has been the Too Many Guys Soccer Show. Have a good week.